Market zoom, Sensex gains more than 300 points to end above 26,000 levels. Nifty to ends above 7,700 level mark. India versus the West at WTO in New Delhi. Unhappy over slow progress on the food security issue. Government all set to take a final call on India's position on the ongoing talks at the World Trade Organization. Finance Minister says 19 out of 79 loss-making public sector companies turned around. Says 4 PSUs incapable of revival need to be shut down. Stresses on professional management of loss-making PSUs. And finally, reeling under twin disasters of MS-17 and MS-370, Malaysian Airlines faces a difficult future. Airline says it is determined to rebuild trust. Malaysian government committed in ensuring the airline's long-term future as its national carrier. Well, hello and welcome to Business Wrap. I'm Sidhant, Sibal, and let's start with our staple, that's the stock markets. It was a stellar session for the markets. Sensex rose more than 1% on Tuesday after telecom stocks surged following Idea sellers' better than expected earnings, while stronger Asian shares also boosted sentiments. Sensex rallied over 300 points in trade to end above its crucial psychological resistance level of 26,000. Sensex closed at 26,026, up 311 points. Nifty also managed to reclaim its crucial psychological level of 7750, supported by gains in realty, power, oil and gas and the realty stocks. Nifty closed at 7768, up 84 points. Sensex has rallied 3% in over 6 days to become the world's top performing index. Gains on the chart were in the Bharti Airtel, RIL, HDFC, TCS and Hindalco Industries, which were up by between 1 to 5%. Losses on the chart were Maruti Suzuki, L&T, Mahindra and Mahindra, BHEL, Axis Bank, which were down by about 1%. So a terrific Tuesday for the markets. Well, on to global market action. Asian stocks rose today as investors shrugged off international tension after the downing of a passenger jet in Ukraine on 17th July and fighting between Israeli and Palestinian militants in the Gaza Strip. Key benchmark indices in Hong Kong, South Korea, China, Indonesia, Japan, Taiwan rose by between 0.09% to 1.69%. Indonesia's Jakarta Composite fell 1.47%. On to European stocks. Well, European stocks rose today amid signs that tension over Ukraine's crisis is easing. Key benchmark indices in UK, Germany and France were up by between 0.51% to 0.76%. Well, our next news is from Geneva. Well, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi will take a final call on India's position on the ongoing talks at the World Trade Organization by tomorrow, even as New Delhi appeared to be unrelenting in its demand to finalize a deal that addresses its food security concerns in return for a trade facilitation agreement. India has said that it would not ratify a World Trade Organization trade facilitation agreement reached last year in Bali, Indonesia, if some guarantee on food security is not given. To take effect, the Bali Pact on trade facilitation needs to be approved by all 160 WTO members.
Amid sharpening differences between India and developed world on WTO issues, Union Cabinet headed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi will finalize this week New Delhi's stand on Bali Agreement, including ratification of the Trade Facilitation Pact. The Cabinet meeting on Wednesday comes close to the July 31st deadline for ratification and protocol of Trade Facilitation Agreement. India has vehemently opposed the process of implementation of the WTO's Bali Agreement, which includes TFA, Permanent Solution on India's public stock holding of food grains for its food security program, and issues pertaining to least developed countries. The final protocol for Trade Facilitation Agreement, which is dear to the developed world, including the US and Australia, was concluded by the WTO members, but no single meeting has happened on India's food security related issues. Cabinet would take a call whether to ratify the Trade Facilitation Pact or not. The pact will be formally implemented in 2015. The cabinet meeting also assumed significance on the backdrop of the WTO's two-day General Council meeting starting on Thursday, which will discuss the Bali issues. India has said that no action on food security issues being taken. The current WTO norms limits the value of food subsidies at 10% of the total value of food grains production. However, the support is calculated at prices that are over 2 decades old and not at the current prices. In the recently concluded G20 Trade Ministers meeting in Sydney, Commerce and Industry Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had raised India's concern over the slow progress in finding a permanent solution for its food subsidies. The Trade Facilitation Agreement, which aims at simplifying customs procedure, increasing transparency and reducing transactions cost, is being pushed by the US and other developed nations as they seek to bolster their sagging economies through an unhindered international trade by way of a uniform and easy procedures at customs. India is asking for change in the base year of 1986 for calculating the food subsidies. The US gives about $120 billion as agriculture subsidy as compared to India's $12 billion. India has asked the G20 to show leadership and address the genuine concerns of India and understand its sensibilities. Business Bureau, DD News.
While commenting on the ongoing discussions at the World Trade Organization's Trade Facilitation Agreement, FICCI, industry body FICCI, has said that through this agreement, India will be able to see a significant reduction in transaction costs involved in trading across borders. This is good for both the trade and enterprise in India, and industry expects the government to take a considered view on signing of this agreement. The benefits, the industry says, would accrue to Indian industry in long term following this agreement, which will be sizable for the industry. Well, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley today informed Rajya Sabha that loss-making PSUs need professional management, adding that 79 PSUs are loss-making and 19 have been turned around. Finance Minister said that 4 PSUs which are incapable of revival need to be shut down. He said efforts are being made to revive 7 PSUs through joint venture or divestment.
That these are 79 PSUs we are dealing with, which have become over the period of time as loss-making. The revival and restructuring package, already in 31 of them, has been made. 7 of them are going to be revived through a joint venture or a disinvestment process. Revival through merger with other PSUs is applicable to 7 of them. There is another proposal which the Honourable Member Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar just asked, by giving them to a holding company in relation to 3 of them. Now, there are 4 of them which the government has felt are incapable of revival.
Well, speaking in the Parliament, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley said that the government is implementing several steps to make sure that the current account deficit or CAD is maintained under this containable limits.
A particular element of discipline into the economy was introduced. Non-essential imports were being discouraged. Several steps were taken. Each one of those steps is being continued to make sure that the current account deficit is kept under containable limits. Current account deficit has come down to 1.7%, and we are making an effort to make sure that it is maintained under the as far as under the containable limits is concerned.
Well, the Supreme Court has refused to release Sahara chief Subrata Roy on bail or parole. The Apex Court, however, allowed Sahara to sell or mortgage its hotels in New York and London. The court said Sahara can now hold negotiations to sell properties in police custody whenever and wherever they like. And it said Sahara can hold negotiations with the clients outside jail between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. under police custody. The Sahara Group has been struggling to raise 10,000 crore rupees to secure bail for its chief. Well, struck by 2 disasters in less than 5 months, Malaysia's national airline is facing an unprecedented situation. With its image tainted, experts say the firm will have to reinvent itself to regain customer confidence. The Malaysian government, the majority shareholder in the Malaysian airline, is committed to ensure the airline's long-term future as its national carrier. The Malaysian government said this in a statement today morning.
Another in a short span of time. Hard enough for an airline to rebound. It has been a tragic year for Malaysian Airlines with 2 disasters in less than 5 months. Just months after Flight 370 disappeared, a second Malaysian airline plane crashed over eastern Ukraine with 298 passengers and crew on board. Both these incidents would make future passengers think twice before booking a spot on the airline. The airline was struggling even before the disappearance of its flight MH370 in March. And the second disaster will pile on the pressure. Flight 370 disappeared on March 8th and was never found. The company believes it crashed in the Indian Ocean and that all 239 people aboard the aircraft died. That crash left the airline facing costly lawsuits and millions of dollars in payments to passengers' families. Questions are being asked about whether the carrier can now survive after the plane crash over eastern Ukraine. Also, Malaysian Airlines has been struggling against competition from rival low-cost airlines in its home market and is seen in desperate need of restructuring. The company has been losing money for many years and its market value has fallen by more than 40% in the past 9 months. The struggling carrier tried to boost revenue by selling more tickets rather than raising prices while keeping costs under control. It also cancelled some longer flight routes, but the strategy never took hold and the difficult business climate forced the airline into the red for the past 3 years in a row, leading to a loss of about $1.3 billion over that period. According to reports, the loss-making airline is now planning to present a revival plan to Khazanah Nasional, the government fund that holds a majority stake in it. Khazanah, the investment fund owned by the Malaysian government, which currently holds a 69% stake in the company, is reportedly contemplating a range of measures, including taking the company private or declaring bankruptcy. Business Bureau, DD News.
Meanwhile, rebels in eastern Ukraine have handed over 2 flight data recorders from the downed MH17 plane to Malaysian experts. A senior rebel leader signed them over to Malaysian officials at a meeting in the city of Donetsk. Experts say the black box will reveal the exact time of the incident and the altitude and the exact position of the aircraft.
And the other one, do you know that?
Earlier, Malaysia has reached an agreement with Alexander Burdai, the leader of the separatist group in the eastern Ukraine, to retrieve the bodies of the victims of MH17. Talking to media persons, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak said that he has secured agreement with Burdai to hand over black boxes and allow the bodies of the victims to be evacuated by train. Now some news from the telecom sector. The telecom regulator TRAI has permitted spectrum sharing among telecom service providers across all 6 frequency bands that have been identified for farm out among the telecom service providers. Releasing its latest guidelines on the spectrum sharing, the TRAI, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, said spectrum sharing would be limited to 2 licensees within the same circle. Here is a report.
The telecom regulator has proposed allowing any 2 telecom companies to share any category of similar spectrum in a circle, including airwaves allotted at administrative prices. At present, telecom operators are allowed to share passive infrastructure like mobile towers, which has helped them reducing operational cost, but not active infrastructure like spectrum. TRAI's suggestions could ensure efficient use of resources and cheaper voice and data services for users. Telecom Regulatory Authority of India recommended that airwaves in all bands, be it 2G, 3G, 4G, will be shareable, but both operators must have that spectrum in the same band. For instance, for 2 operators to share airwaves in the 900 MHz band, both must have airwaves in the same band. However, it has not allowed leasing of airwaves. The sharing agreement need not be limited to any tenure other than the life of the license. For consumers, this could mean better quality of voice services, fewer calls dropping, and faster data speeds. It could even translate into lower tariffs as operators' capital expenditure is likely to fall. The much-awaited facility is set to benefit the companies like Bharti Airtel, Idea Cellular, and Vodafone India, which will be able to add to their stretched bandwidth holdings to service millions of their subscribers, that too without taking part in expensive auctions. Others such as Reliance Communications, Tata Teleservices and Aircel will be able to put idle capacities to use. Both sets of telecoms would generate higher revenue. The Telecom Department, after approving the guidelines, will pass on the recommendations to the Telecom Commission, its highest decision-making body. Telecom Commission will take the final call. Department of Telecom can also send it back to TRAI for clarifications. The Economic Survey had earlier this month recommended the government to come out with better spectrum management through measures like trading and sharing of spectrum so as to bring down the cost of spectrum. Business Bureau, DD News.
Well, on back of that news, the telecom stocks rose and they were the leading sector today in the markets, and the leading stock was Bharti Airtel. Well, continuing with our news, a 4-member delegation from Pakistan visited the Sabarmati riverfront project to replicate it in Lahore on River Ravi. The visit is touted to be on the behest of Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif after he learnt about the major development initiative undertaken by his counterpart Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat.
A Pakistani delegation has arrived in Gujarat to study Sabarmati Riverfront Development Project to replicate it along River Ravi in Lahore city. The 4-member delegation visited the riverfront park in Ahmedabad and inquired about technical details of the project that was initiated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he was the Chief Minister of Gujarat. The visit aims to study technical parameters and find how the project addressed environmental aspects and urban renewal issues.
For next 2 days, we will be trying to study the technical aspects of the project, and will, God willing, learn the lessons that you have learned and the good practices that you have adopted, and we'll try to replicate as much and as much we can at Lahore while developing riverfront for River Ravi.
Deputy Commissioner of Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation said that they were interested in the budget, special development control regulations and drainage system.
They wanted to know more of the technical details. They come here actually to know that, and as they rightly said, they also have a kind of non-perennial river. This may be replicable there.
Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif had shown interest in the project during his visit to India to attend Modi's swearing-in ceremony. Business Bureau, DD News.
So, a Sabarmati model for Lahore. Well, let's check out other top business stories of the day. The pension fund regulator PFRDA has framed regulation for 2 key operative arms, NPS Trust and Pension Funds Manager, for expansion and deepening of the sector. The National Pension System Trust is set up and constituted for taking care of the assets and funds under the NPS in the interest of the subscribers, said the regulations issued by the regulator as per the PFRDA Act. Yahoo has acquired an app analytics firm, Flurry, to help boost its advertising revenue from smartphones. Flurry helps apps developers analyze data about their users and deliver more personalized ads to them. Some of Yahoo's rivals have also brought mobile advertising technology firms in an attempt to lure marketers to develop their apps as well as generate revenue from ads on other companies' apps. Well, Swiss banking giant Credit Suisse has reported its biggest quarterly loss in almost 6 years after being hit by costs related to its settlement with US authorities over tax evasion charges. For 3 months to June, Credit Suisse recorded a loss of $780 million. And finally, now Google Map in Hindi. Search giant Google has launched its Google Map in Hindi, seeking to make its navigation service more useful for users locally. Google Maps in Hindi will be available for desktop and Android mobile phone users who will be able to seek Hindi names for cities, localities and important roads and routes, as well as popular points of interest such as public parks and schools. Also, another news, according to a survey by Nelson Global, consumer confidence increased in the second quarter to reach highest levels since the first quarter in 2007 as job optimism improved. Job market expectations for the upcoming year improved in every region except Latin America. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the Bhabha Atomic Research Centre in Mumbai yesterday. He held a meeting with top officials at BARC and took stock of all the ongoing programs. The Prime Minister laid stress on presenting the humane side of India's capabilities in nuclear science throughout the world, with special outreach to the Indian youth in schools and colleges.
The NDA government has given high priority to national security since coming to power 2 months ago. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has accorded special attention to science and technology besides focusing on defence preparedness. And on Monday, the Prime Minister visited the Bhabha Atomic Research Centre or BARC in Mumbai. Last month, he was present at the launch of PSLV C-23 satellite and the induction of INS Vikramaditya into Indian Navy. During his visit, Narendra Modi was briefed by BARC officials and scientists on India's atomic energy program and research and development initiatives, besides contributions in other areas such as healthcare, solid waste management and water purification by Department of Atomic Energy. The Prime Minister was shown some of Atomic Energy Department's most advanced facilities at BARC, including the Dhruva Research Reactor. Prime Minister applauded the achievements of Indian scientific community in the challenging fields of science and technology. He expressed satisfaction over country's self-reliance in the nuclear fuel cycle and the commercial success of the indigenous reactors. He also assured the scientists of his government's commitment to energy security based on clean and reliable sources. Narendra Modi said full support will be given to the implementation of DAE's ambitious expansion program and expressed hope that the body will meet the target of increasing the capacity by 3 times from the present level of 5,780 megawatt by 2023-24 within the projected cost. He also asked DAE to constantly upgrade technology with regard to India's long-term plans and international trends. He urged them to ensure adequate availability of skilled human resources in the country. Narendra Modi hoped that the role of industry in providing equipment and systems for the nuclear program would continue to grow and highlighted the need to tap additional sources of investments for the ambitious expansion program. The Prime Minister praised the contribution of DA scientists in the area of cancer research and treatment to the Tata Memorial Hospital, while hoping for early implementation of plant projects in Chandigarh and Visakhapatnam to take one of the most advanced standards of cancer treatments in Asia to other parts of India. With Bureau Inputs, Sudhakar Das and Shishir Shaler, DT News.
Well, let's check out rupee's closing figure. Well, rupee rose 6 paise to end at 60.24 versus the US dollar. Well, let's go to some international news stories, especially on the business front. News coming from Egypt. The government there has come up with a package of tough new austerity measures aimed to reduce Egypt's public deficit to more manageable levels. But this could trigger further civil unrest for the country's new president, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi.
A new government but same old problems. 3 years of political turmoil has been Egypt's economy slide deeper into debt. New President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi says he is determined to fix it. He's already raised taxes on cigarettes, alcohol and more recently on stock market gains. But it's the near 80% increase in energy prices that was seen as the biggest shock.
We've seen big increases in the prices of 80-octane fuel, which is the one that's most commonly used by the poorest strata of Egyptian society. This has resulted to increases in transportation costs, and this has resulted in conflicts between public transport workers and their customers who are rejecting the price increases.
Sisi wants to reduce the deficit to 10% of GDP in the next fiscal year. That compares to an expected shortfall of 12% in 2013-14. The government says the cut in fuel subsidies should help save them over 7 billion annually, and there is still room to cut further. It is a bitter pill for many Egyptians, where the poorest spend more than half of their income on food.
The government's treading a very precarious line. It either fixes its finances or risks economic chaos, or it removes food subsidies, is what it's trying to do, and risk civil unrest. So, they are damned if they do, they're damned if they don't.
Inflation has been a huge problem. It had been gradually falling after surging to a 4-year high of 13% in November. But economists expect it to raise again next month. In a surprise move last week, the government raised its key rates by 1%. That may help keep a lid on rising prices, but the country still has many structural problems that need fixing.
The quality of education is a big problem, and whether or not it suits the labor market. The ability of the state to attract investments is a big issue. Political stability will really depend on how much foreign investment, particularly from Gulf countries, does Egypt manage to attract.
Egypt relies on billions of dollars in aid from its Gulf allies to help stimulate the economy. But economic recovery has been sluggish, and growth forecasts this year expected to grow at 2.5% at most, well below what it needs to create enough jobs for a rapidly growing population. Business Bureau, DT News.
Well, time for a recap of the top business headlines. Markets zoom, Sensex gains more than 300 points to end above the crucial 26,000 levels. Nifty to ends above 7,700 level mark. India versus the West at WTO. New Delhi unhappy over slow progress on food security issue. Government all set to take a final call on India's position on the ongoing talks at the World Trade Organization. Finance Minister says 19 out of 79 loss-making public sector companies turned around, says 4 PSUs incapable of survival needs to be shut down, stresses on professional management of loss-making PSUs. And finally, reeling under twin disasters of MS-17 and MS-370, Malaysian Airlines faces a difficult future. Airline says is determined to rebuild trust. Malaysian government says committed in ensuring the airline's long-term future as its national carrier. Well, that's all in this edition of Business Wrap. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.